Nice to see you.
Nice background. Nice to see you too.
Thank
Nice
you.
background you have.
Thank you so much.
How do you like my lotus of guitars, huh?
I love it. It's quite the collection.
Yeah, it's a partial collection. Here I am in Seattle at our home in Seattle, and the other part of my collection is at our home in Los Angeles, right?
Not, as soon as I saw them, I thought, that's quite the collection. And I know that that's not even the half of it.
Right. So, are you living in Santa Fe now?
I am in Santa Fe. I've been here since November 2019, this go round.
So, November 2019 was before the pandemic hit. So, you got out of town just in time.
I did. I was actually in Seattle where you are now, and I got this really strong intuitive hit that said, get out of LA immediately. Just pack your car, take your favorite things, don't think about it, leave.
Good for you.
Yeah.
And you were where, in Santa Monica area?
No, I was in Hollywood Hills, Beechwood Canyon.
Okay.
Yeah. In LA, I'm a mountain girl. I mean, I think I'm always a mountain girl. But you know LA, it's the oceans or the hills.
Yeah, it is. The oceans or the hills. We're in the farmland in LA. We're right there at the area around Beverly Center. Not
Oh yeah.
Beverly. We're between Beverly Center and the Grove, um, on a street called Lindenhurst, which is between Sweetser and La Jolla.
Uh-huh.
A very nice area, actually, but it is in the flat. And yeah, we like it there. We've been there a long time. Been there a long time. And so, tell me about how your book is doing and how your podcast is.
Well, the book is great. It's been, as you know, it's a process. So I've been writing this current book since 2019. Is that the one you're asking about? Or are you asking about my propaganda book? Or are you asking about the word book that you blurbed for me?
The word book.
The word book is doing great, considering that I published it myself and that, my marketing efforts are minimal. People love it. It was a textbook I started teaching homeschool. So I taught a homeschool high school course that finished a couple weeks ago, and that was our textbook, and the kids loved it. So it's going great.
You're the kind of teacher that every middle school and high schooler should have because you're irreverent in the best way. And not only irreverent, but also innovative. And that's the nature of the adolescent psycho-emotional component. The adolescent, in order for there to be growth, there has to be irreverence.
Mm.
There has to be reverence and irreverence. There has to be an honoring of the past, but not a confinement to the past. And then there has to be the authority to be innovative, which is, you've never lost that. I mean, it is so apparent in your art. Every time I see your art, I fall in love because it just reminds me of our grandchildren that every one of your characters is like their attitudes, and it's like this expression of this joy, with some deviousness, but not so much that it's going to become destructive. But it might destroy, like Mercury in retrograde, that which is no longer necessary.
Thank you. I love that.
So when my wife, I hardly relate to social media. I mean, I have a team that works it. But when my wife said that you had this podcast, because you're on our list, and she follows it, and I'm in, you're one of my loves in life, right? And my wife and I both admire you. Um, it's this. She said, Danny Katz has got this podcast. I said, well, we gotta get connected.
Oh, thank you. You know, your email arrived on a day where I was just in this like, I'm overwhelmed. It's so much work. Why am I doing this? Is anyone even listening? What's the point? And then I got your email and it was like, you know, a message from the angels. It was like, keep going. You're on the right track.
Yeah, you are on the right track. And I want to say that that sensation that you experience is not an isolated nor an exclusive sensation. Every one of us has that sensation on occasion. The only difference between one person's version of it and another person's version of it is perhaps how many times it's happened,
Mhm.
right? How many times they've collapsed under that kind of sensation, not in a not in a total way, but and how they've worked to get themselves back up. And so after a while, you learn not only to see what has happened, but you start to see it before it happens.
Mhm.
And so you can prepare for that kind of collapse, because anyone who is creating the future is walking on air, because there are no roads. No one has done the future before, because if they had done it before, then you'd just be walking in the past. And so for people like you, for people like myself, for people like my wife, for people like those who we hold in our circle, we're walking on air,
Mhm.
you know. And we are from the future, because our incarnations on planetary systems much older than this one have already been through the iPhone era, right? You know, where we come from, you, I, my wife, etc., where we come from, the iPhone is an archaeological relic. You know, they find it on digs, right?
Right.
From the ancient past, and they go, oh my God, look at this. When people had to externalize their internal powers, look at what they had to use. Look at this clunky thing, right? And the people in those locations where we came from in a past incarnation, in this incarnation we came from that, you know, we go, well, the iPhone is inside me. You know, I've replaced telephony with telepathy.
Right.
And all of the other things that appear to be outside of me, that, you know, all of this machine learning and all of this clunky arcane technology,
Mhm.
which to most people on the planet looks like this dream come true. For us, it's the nightmare of what destroyed many planetary systems. And so not only are you feeling that surge of innovation, and you've created it with language, right? Lang, the length, the depth, and gwedge, the gauge.
Mhm.
Not only have you created it with language, but you're creating it with education, you're creating it with just your attitude, you're
Mhm.
creating it with your art.
Thank
And Picasso, another artistic innovator, was constantly in doubt. You know, Van Gogh killed himself because he was in such doubt.
Mhm.
And when his brother tried to save his life, he pleaded with his brother. He said, "At least let me succeed at this." And now his little tiniest paintings sell for tens of millions.
Yeah.
And these people who were futurists, who were seers, source seers, which is where the word sorcerer comes from.
Mhm.
They were source seers, and they were living in a world that was so archaic
Mm.
that they felt lonely. They
Yeah.
felt like sometimes they felt like they were wrong. Haven't you sometimes felt like you were wrong?
Of course.
Of course, I have too. And, and then what happens is that when you have that sensation that you feel like you're wrong, and then the people around you that don't like, and I'm not talking about your friends and close relations, I'm talking about your competitors.
Mm-hmm.
And the moment they sense that weakness, it's almost like they can smell it, like a predator smells blood.
Right.
They pile on you.
Mm-hmm.
And then that tries to confirm that you're wrong. And that's when you really have to stand up inside first in order to stand up outside. And I know what you go through, and you know what I go through.
Mm-hmm.
And thank God for those of us that are not inclined toward being inappropriate in certain ways, because what some of the future seers end up becoming is scoundrels.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm not going to mention the name because it's all over the place, but right around us, right? The scoundrel scandal.
Right.
And it's because when you get that far out and that far ahead of all others, you need some kind of comfort. You need some kind of comfort.
Mm-hmm.
And some people go after it with food. Some people go after it with other substances. Some people go after it with becoming, a predator.
Yeah.
And so for us that are maintaining, by the grace of the cosmos, I'm not saying that we are better than anyone, but by the grace of the cosmos, we're maintaining integrity. We go through that depression, we go through that torment, and we just have to gut it through, right? We just have to gut it through. We don't have anything to reach out for and to feed ourselves with.
No, it's just letting it burn from the inside. And it's such a quieter path, because it's not like, for me, the accolades or the acknowledgement are coming in giant platforms. They haven't yet, or big giant piles of money. It was an email from you. There are these tiny signs from the universe that are so meaningful to me, that are the way spirit talks to me and says, you are aligned, keep going. And then just trusting in our integrity and internal knowingness and letting the world figure it out or not, but trusting that I'm doing what I came here to do, and that's having an effect on some dimension, on some timeline, even if I'm not seeing it in this one.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And the downside becomes what I consider to be a rest period, almost like a hibernation.
Mm-hmm.
And in hibernation, those creatures that hibernate, they feed on themselves,
Mm-hmm.
right? They lose their strength. They lose their strength, and so they have to have been strong enough to be able to hibernate. So sometimes I look at the moment of that pressure that tries to depress us,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because depression is that there's greater pressure coming in from the outside than there is exuding from the inside, like in hibernation. And so I look at those moments and I say, okay, I'm in a rest period. And in that rest period, I'm going to sort of resuscitate and rejuvenate that which isn't necessarily known to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because it appears that everything that is known to me is diminishing.
Mm-hmm.
The bear, all of their weight is starting to be lost.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they have to really build up to be able to go and hibernate, because in that hibernation, you're losing something to gain something.
Absolutely. I don't know if you're familiar with the Gene Keys, the spiritual transmission, the book written by Richard Rudd. Do you know it?
I am not.
So the Gene Keys it's super dense, but it delineates each of the 64 DNA codons as a pathway to enlightenment. And each one has its own shadow, gift, and Siddhic frequency. And the very first gene key goes from entropy to freshness to beauty. And the gist is about these cycles of entropy rest, and that's where novelty comes from. In that system, beauty means novelty. And it's like, if we're going all the time, then we're kind of going to be doing a version of the same. When we rest, novelty comes through that stillness.
Well spoken. Well spoken.
Yeah.
Send me a link to that. I'm interested in that.
I will.
How beautiful that utilization of novelty, the novelle, right? The novel, the circumstance. I mean, we are in a period of novel, right? We are in a period of fiction. Fiction being that it's not necessarily a story of the past. It's a depiction of something that may not have taken place.
Right.
But because the physics of infinity is that everything is everywhere always, even though it doesn't appear to have taken place, it has somewhere. Right. And it is still taking place because nothing is ever ending. It's in that cycle. But the use of that word novelty, it's interesting because traditionalists are always very temperamental. Mm-hmm. And novelty they equate with frivolity.
Right.
With something that is not meaningful.
Right.
And I can remember the traditionalists around that which I mastered and teach in Kundalini. Mm-hmm. And it was that you can't innovate. And I thought to myself, well, Kundalini is a science of discovery. Mm-hmm. And if a science of discovery, like chemistry and physics and all of the others, has nothing new, then it's dead. Mm. If it's not growing, it's dying.
Yeah.
And think of that in your world. I know it's not your total world, because I know you're a much more complex being than that, but just your world and my world of language. Mm-hmm. Every word was made up at some point in time.
Right.
And I love your attitude towards that. And to innovate words is to innovate mantras. Man, the mind, and tra, projection, right? To innovate the projection of the mental body. Mm-hmm. And to discover new and to create new. Mm-hmm. And to make believe before you believe what you made.
Yes.
I love that cycle. Is it you make believe, and then ultimately you believe what you made, and then it becomes a thing.
Right.
It becomes a reality. You and I would be the worst people to play against in Scrabble. Because people would say, well, that's not a word. And we would say, it is now.
Exactly.
Hence the word Scrabble. Very close to scribble.
Right. Or Scrabble. Or scramble.
Scramble. Yeah. So God bless you. That's so beautiful. The gene keys, huh?
Yes, I'll send you the link. I think you'll love it. Very expansive. It's a living wisdom. So the deeper, I've been studying the gene keys since 2010, and it's one of those systems where reality will reorganize based on what I'm reading to show me my lessons, to expand my understanding. It's a really fun way of playing with the multiverse. Yeah.
Speaking of which, the multiverse, I developed this attitude, which then, as you know, I'm an artist too. My graphics that I teach with, and
which I love.
thank you. And I realized that the science of astronomy is basically still living in the flat Earth version of the universe, because I don't know if you know how familiar you are with a golf ball, but a golf ball has tiny little divots in it.
Yep.
Right? Okay. And if you think of a golf ball as a sample, an example of a megaverse, what I call a megaverse. And a megaverse is this somewhat spherical, gelatinous circumstance that has all of these divots in it. And these divots are caused by the fact that the megaverse was assembled by a central sun throwing off debris that then becomes this gelatinous skin. But it's also throwing off what I call universal suns, which are like as big as a universe.
Right.
And they float towards the surface of this gelatinous skin of the megaverse. And when they get somewhat close, like, you know, several billion light years close to that skin, they suck it in gravitationally into this funnel. So the current astronomers are knowing that the universe is funnel shaped.
Right.
What they're not knowing is what's beyond the lip of the funnel.
Exactly.
Which is just more of the same skin until it dips into another universe.
Right.
And another universe, and another universe, and another universe. And so around the megaverse are a ginormous number of universes. And then around the cosmos are a ginormous number of megaverses. That's the multiverse. And then I say, well, that's inside of something else, which is inside of something else, which is inside of something else, because it's really just an omniverse, right? It's just forever.
Right.
And forever cannot have any distinction, because distinction is measurable.
Right.
So that physics of infinity is that if that's the way the circumstance is within which we exist in this very seemingly measurable existence, then we must have the right, we must have the authority to do what we want to do, to be who we want to be.
Of course. Of course.
And that reminds me of what you would be like as a high school teacher. You know, you say you just finished this course. You're infusing in those students what they know to be true.
I appreciate that.
And that's the best form of learning, when you suddenly realize, holy smokes, I am right. My thinking is correct, even though it doesn't agree with anything that I've met.
Right, right. And that is my number one, because I've taught different courses at this point, and there, you know, of course, there are different skills and precepts and modules. And the fundamental through line in all of them is you are your own authority. You get to be an empowered being. You get to be exactly what you want to be. And my aim is to teach them how to think, never what to think. It's, you know, if they disagree with me, I'm like, yes, wonderful. Talk me through it. Great. You know, and just giving them the permission to own their own power and their own authority. And it was interesting because as you were describing the megaverse based on the golf ball, and you're taking it out and out and out, and my 3D monkey mind is tracking you and following you. And then you mentioned the word infinite, and I watched it all collapse. because what is there in infinite? Finite, right? That limitation. And I wonder, like, just these simple shifts in language, what would they do? How would they change the way that we perceive?
Exactly.
And our awareness and ability to co-create with all that truly is possible.
Well, that is the key, isn't it? And that's what you're unlocking. And that's what I'm unlocking.
Absolutely.
Because that is what limits us. Language, gauge of depth and length. Infinity cannot be divided, and that's why they call it a holographic universe, because every part of the hologram is equal to the whole. That's what a hologram means.
Right.
And so if you divide the universe, then you have two infinities, which merge together as infinity, because there is no definition, there is no defining, there is no measurement.
Right.
There's no direction, there's no location.
Right.
And those that, I mean, you think of it in politics, conserve, right? Conserve, right? Keep it controlled, keep it the same, keep it this way. Liberal, to liberate, right? Although they've gotten a long way away from that, because they're all parading around this capital structure.
Right.
Which is trying to say, we can measure your value with the value of the capital that you have achieved, or the amount of capital that you are going to receive.
Right.
The fact is that those that are trying to conserve, there needs to be a particular amount of conservation, but there needs to be a balance of conservation and liberation.
Right.
And conservation would be the masculine, and liberation would be the feminine, because the feminine is the magic, and the masculine is the logic. And the logic is what rules the world. Laws, rules, right? And they're not allowing the magic to exist. I mean, even in what's happening in this country right now, with this whole thing of we own your right to be who you are. Women have no right to do what they need to do for themselves. My goodness, it's so primitive.
It's beyond primitive, and it's very frustrating to observe, because I look at it like I'm playing with a toddler who's pretending to be the almighty king and telling me what I can and can't do with myself. And you don't yell at a toddler. You don't rail against a toddler. You just say, that's adorable, and you do what you're going to do anyway. And I'm really excited for us to take our power back and stop giving it away to this fiction that these people have no right to impose upon us.
Okay. I'm going to take what you said earlier and subtract what you said later. You said earlier, I love it. And we all make this move. You said earlier, I'm just going to tell the toddler how adorable it is, and then go do what I want to do. And what you said later was, the toddler has no right, but actually the toddler has every right.
The toddler has every right to play however the toddler wants. When we come to imposing our will upon others, no one on this planet has that right.
No one on this planet has the right to obey those who are trying to impose the rule upon us. It rests with us.
Absolutely.
And you know that. More than anyone that I know knows that. You know? And so it's perfect, because what we just experienced was the catch, the hook.
Right.
You know, I'm a Pisces. And I was told by a very wise astrologer, watch out, because you can get hooked, like a fish, right? Getting hooked if you take the bait.
Right.
If you bite the bait.
Right.
Biting the bait is saying to the toddler class, you have no right. That's biting the bait, because
Exactly.
the moment I engage in that conversation, I have lost.
Absolutely.
You know, another one of my innovative drawings is the spiral of evolution. And after, mineral, and then plant, and then the insect of animals, and then the animals, and then the humans. The human is divided up into 5 segments. The embryos, which is 2/3 of the human race. And they're very innocent, but very influenceable.
Yes.
Then come the fetals. And just like a fetus in the womb, its only task is to take, by whatever means necessary, as much nourishment from the mother to build the strength that it will be requiring to make it through the birthing process. The most selfish life form on the planet is the fetus of any species. The most self-oriented. And then comes the birthing process, which are the natals. And they're going through that pressure of just collapsing and being suffocated in the birthing process. And straining through all their strength to reach into the light, coming out of the darkness of the womb into that light of spirit. And then they come out into that, and they are what I refer to as the dhyānas, the dhyānas of the Patanjali's 8 limbs, right? And then from the dhyānas they become the future bearers like us, the bhavishyals, which means the history of the future. That which knows the future because it was there, it's their history.
Right.
That's you and I and many others, my wife and many others, your close relations and many others. 2/3 of the world's population is in that first stage. 1/5, 20%, is in the second stage, the fetals. And the fetals are the ones that are ruling the world. They rule politics, they rule economics, they rule religions, they rule everything. And their job is to be aggressive, selfish, manipulative. And what they have found, and it's very, very smart of them, they have found that in democracies, if you manipulate 2/3 of the population, which is in the embryal stage, you got it all made.
Right.
And so here we sit as the bhavishyals. Our task is to do exactly what you were saying. Our task is to influence the toddlers with how adorable you are, with love, so that they're attracted to our, I always say, we need to learn how to make balloon animals. So the ones that are giving them the guns, don't have the power over them because they'll be enchanted and enticed by our balloon animals and they'll drop their guns.
Right.
And so the game is such an incredible game, but it can't be won by force. It can only be won by what you just said. You said, tell them how adorable they are, and then go do what we have to do.